Have you ever wondered why your neighbor, who makes roughly the same salary as you, somehow always has money for vacations, seems stress-free about bills, and never talks about being broke, while you're still living paycheck to paycheck, despite working your tail off for decades? Or maybe you've asked yourself this painful question: I'm in my 40s, 50s, even 60s. Have I missed my chance to build real wealth? Am I too late to catch up? Here's what's really eating at you. You see people your age who seem to have it all figured out financially, and you can't understand what they're doing differently. You work hard, you're responsible, you pay your bills, but somehow you're not getting ahead. Meanwhile, it feels like everyone else got some secret manual you never received. Well, here's something that'll blow your mind. There's this fascinating book called The Millionaire Next Door, where researchers spent years studying real millionaires, people with seven-figure net worths who actually keep their money. What they discovered will shock you. The typical millionaire doesn't live in a penthouse or drive a Ferrari. They live in regular neighborhoods, drive Toyotas, and shop at the same grocery stores as you. The ultra-wealthy don't have secret investments you can't access. They don't have magical income sources. What they have are secret systems that most people never learn, and it's never too late to start using them. If you've ever felt like you're missing some crucial piece of the wealth puzzle, comment "Quiet Wealth" below, because what I'm about to share changes everything. 1. The compound time machine. Why early beats everything. Most Americans believe wealth comes from perfect market timing or high salaries, completely missing the most powerful wealth-building force available to everyone: the mathematics of time. You're waiting for the right moment to invest while your most valuable asset, years of compound growth, slips away forever. Every month you delay, you're not just missing that month's opportunity. You're missing decades of what that money could have become. In ancient Persia, a brilliant chess master defeated the mighty emperor in a game that had never been lost before. Impressed, the emperor offered any reward the master desired. The humble chess master pointed to the chessboard and made a seemingly modest request. "Your Majesty, I ask only for grains of rice. Place 1 grain on the first square, 2 on the second, 4 on the third, doubling each square until all 64 squares are filled." The emperor laughed at such a small request, immediately agreeing. His mathematicians began the calculation. By the 10th square, 512 grains, hardly anything. By the 20th, over 1 million grains, getting substantial. By the 30th, over 1 billion grains, the emperor's amusement turned to concern. When they calculated the 64th square, the result was staggering. The rice would weigh more than all the mountains in the kingdom combined. The emperor realized he had been outsmarted by the power of exponential growth. The chess master understood what the mighty ruler did not. Small beginnings, given enough time to double and redouble, create wealth beyond imagination. Apply the Persian chess master's exponential principle to your wealth. Start investing any amount immediately. Focus on consistent growth through compound returns, rather than trying to time perfect market moments. The math proves that early small investments beat large, late investments every time. Before making any purchase over $100, use the Future Wealth Calculator. Multiply that amount by 8 to see its 20-year investment value at 7% returns. That $500 designer bag represents $4,000 in lost future wealth. That $50 monthly subscription becomes $400 annually, or $3,200 in 20-year opportunity cost. Create compound consciousness by posting these calculations on your phone as reminders. Track 3 months of opportunity cost spending. Most people discover they're sacrificing $50,000 in future wealth annually on impulse purchases. A young girl found a small acorn and asked her grandfather why he was planting oak trees at age 80. "I'll never see them fully grown," she said. He smiled. "Child, the best time to plant an oak was 50 years ago. The second best time is today. These trees aren't for me, they're for great-grandchildren I'll never meet." The power of compound thinking transforms every financial decision from immediate gratification into generational legacy building. You start seeing money not as something to spend for today's pleasure, but as seeds to plant for tomorrow's freedom. But here's where most people sabotage their compound growth before it even starts. They destroy their wealth-building potential by falling into the trap that keeps 90% of Americans broke, no matter how much they earn. 2. The status trap. Why looking rich keeps you poor. American culture has created a devastating financial illusion where people spend their income trying to appear wealthy instead of building actual wealth. The average household carries $6,194 in credit card debt and spends $18,000 annually on status purchases while having less than $1,000 in emergency savings. You're literally borrowing money to look successful while staying permanently broke. And here's the painful truth. Every dollar you spend trying to impress others is a dollar that could have been building your actual financial freedom. Jesus told a parable about two men who each wanted to build a house. The first man was impatient and prideful. He chose sandy ground near the marketplace where everyone could see his construction, using the finest materials, the most elaborate decorations, hiring the most expensive craftsmen. His house looked magnificent and drew admiration from all who passed by. People whispered about his obvious wealth and success. The second man was humble and patient. He chose a solid rock foundation far from the crowds, using simple but quality materials, focusing on structural integrity over appearance. His house looked modest, and few people even noticed it. Certainly no one was impressed by its ordinary appearance. When the inevitable storms came, torrential rains, flooding rivers, howling winds, the first man's beautiful house collapsed completely, leaving him with nothing but debt and devastation. All his impressive decorations, all his expensive materials, all the admiration he had received meant nothing when the foundation couldn't hold. The second man's humble house stood firm, protecting his family and possessions through every storm. The first man had built for the approval of others and lost everything. The second built for lasting security and gained everything. The deeper truth: external appearance crumbles under pressure, but solid foundations endure forever. Build your financial house on the solid rock of assets rather than the shifting sand of status purchases. Redirect every dollar spent on appearance toward investments that compound over time. Choose financial security over social approval, because when life's inevitable storms hit, your investment portfolio will protect you while your designer clothes won't pay the bills. Implement this status audit system. Track every expense for 30 days, categorizing each as need, survival, want, preference, or status impression. Most people discover 20 to 30% of spending is pure status signaling. Calculate the 20-year compound value of your status spending, typically $100,000 to $300,000 in lost wealth. Create a status replacement strategy. Before any status purchase, invest that amount first, then buy the item with what's left. This simple rule eliminates most status spending because people rarely have enough left after investing to maintain their lifestyle inflation. An old cobbler worked beside a wealthy merchant's shop. Every day, the merchant would mock the cobbler's simple tools and worn apron while displaying his fine silks and gold jewelry. One night, thieves robbed the merchant of everything, leaving him penniless. The cobbler, who had quietly saved every coin, was able to lend the merchant money to restart his business. Years later, the merchant realized true wealth wasn't in what others could see, but in what couldn't be taken away. When you master the art of looking ordinary while becoming extraordinary, you develop the quiet confidence that comes from knowing your worth isn't determined by others' opinions, but by your own financial foundation. Now, once you escape these status traps, here's how you transform that saved money into the invisible wealth system that separates the truly rich from those who just look rich. 3. The invisible asset strategy. Building wealth while others build debt. Most Americans confuse income with wealth and spending with success. creating a devastating cycle where higher earners often have less net worth than modest earners. You focus on appearing prosperous rather than becoming prosperous, accumulating liabilities that drain your wealth instead of assets that build your wealth. The painful reality is that you can make six figures and still be broke if every dollar goes toward things that lose value instead of things that gain value. In ancient Jewish wisdom, there lived two merchants who each inherited 1,000 gold coins from their fathers. The first merchant, desiring to appear successful, used his inheritance to buy fine robes, an ornate shop, expensive displays, and a grand house in the wealthy district. Customers were impressed by his apparent prosperity and flocked to his business. However, the magnificent lifestyle consumed his profits, and within 3 years, he had spent his entire inheritance maintaining appearances, while his actual business generated little real return. The second merchant wore simple clothes and operated from a modest stall, but used his inheritance to purchase quality goods that would appreciate in value: rare spices, precious metals, and plots of land outside the city. People thought him foolish for living so simply despite his inheritance. However, as years passed, his careful investments multiplied. The land increased in value, the precious metals provided security during economic uncertainty, and the rare spices generated consistent profits. After 10 years, the first merchant was bankrupt despite having appeared wealthy, while the second merchant had multiplied his inheritance tenfold while appearing ordinary. The Jewish sages taught, "He who seeks to appear wealthy will become poor, but he who builds wealth quietly will become truly rich." Focus on acquiring appreciating assets rather than impressive possessions. Build invisible wealth through investments, real estate, and business ownership that generate passive income and compound over time, rather than visible wealth through consumption that depletes your resources. Apply the asset versus liability test to every financial decision over $1,000. Ask, will this put money in my pocket over time, asset, or take money from my pocket, liability? Create the invisible wealth portfolio. 40% index funds for market growth, 30% real estate for inflation protection, 20% skill development for income growth, 10% emergency fund for security. Calculate your monthly asset acquisition rate, money that goes toward wealth building versus consumption. Successful people maintain a 4:1 ratio. For every $1 on lifestyle, $4 toward assets. Track this monthly and watch your net worth compound while your lifestyle stays stable. A farmer and his neighbor both inherited fertile land. The neighbor immediately planted flowers to create a beautiful garden that amazed visitors and brought instant admiration. The farmer planted fruit trees, which looked bare and unremarkable for several years. Visitors praised the neighbor's wisdom and mocked the farmer's apparent waste of good land. But seasons passed, and the neighbor's flowers required constant replanting, watering, and expense with no return. The farmer's trees began producing fruit, first a little, then abundantly. While the neighbor struggled to maintain his expensive garden, the farmer fed his family, sold surplus fruit, and saved money every season. True wealth is like fruit trees. It takes time to develop, looks unremarkable while growing, but eventually provides abundant returns that sustain you for life. But there's one final element that separates temporary wealth from generational legacy, and it's the most important principle that 90% of wealthy families completely mess up. 4. The Legacy Foundation, teaching wealth wisdom to the next generation. Wealthy families have a devastating failure rate. 70% lose their wealth by the second generation, 90% by the third generation. This happens because parents focus on leaving money to their children instead of leaving money, wisdom in their children. Without financial education, inherited wealth becomes a curse that destroys work ethic, personal responsibility, and family unity. You're not just building wealth for yourself. You're either building a legacy that lasts generations or setting up your children for financial disaster. The wealthiest merchant in ancient Babylon called his 3 sons to his deathbed. To his eldest son, he gave bags filled with gold coins and said, Guard these carefully, for they are your inheritance. To his middle son, he gave the same amount in silver and instructed, "Keep these safe and use them wisely." To his youngest son, he gave no money, but instead spent his final months teaching him the principles of trade, the art of negotiation, the wisdom of saving, and the power of compound growth. The other sons mocked their youngest brother, believing their father had shown favoritism to them. After the merchant's death, the eldest son, fearful of losing his inheritance, buried the gold and lived conservatively, never learning to grow wealth. The middle son spent his silver gradually on a comfortable lifestyle, believing his inheritance would last forever. The youngest son, armed with knowledge but no capital, began working as an apprentice, saving every coin, learning every trade skill. Within 5 years, the eldest son had the same amount of gold, but no additional skills or income. The middle son had spent half his inheritance and was growing desperate. The youngest son had built a thriving business and accumulated more wealth than both brothers combined. Within 10 years, the youngest son had to financially support both older brothers, who had squandered their inherited wealth. The Babylonian moral: give a man gold, and he has gold until it's spent. Teach a man to create gold, and he will be wealthy forever. Focus on transferring wealth wisdom, not just wealth itself. Teach children how money works, how to create it, how to preserve it, and how to make it grow. Build their financial intelligence alongside any inheritance you plan to leave. Implement the financial apprenticeship system. Ages 6 to 10, teach basic money concepts through allowance tied to chores and savings requirements. Ages 11 to 15, introduce investment concepts by matching their savings contributions and showing compound growth. Ages 16 to 18, have them manage a small business or investment portfolio with your guidance. Create monthly wealth education sessions where you review family financial goals, investment performance, and money lessons. Use the 3-jar system. Save 50%, spend 30%, give 20% to teach balanced money management. Track their financial growth and celebrate milestone achievements to build positive money associations. An elderly gardener noticed a young boy watching him plant saplings that wouldn't mature for decades. "Why do you plant trees you'll never see grow tall?" the boy asked. The gardener smiled, pointing to the massive oak shading them. "Someone planted this tree long before I was born, and I've enjoyed its shade my entire life. I plant these saplings not for myself, but for children not yet born who will someday rest in their shade." The greatest wealth you can leave your children isn't money that can be spent, but wisdom that multiplies across generations, creating shade trees of prosperity for grandchildren you'll never meet. Now, let me tie all of this together with the one choice that will determine whether you join the quiet millionaires or stay trapped in the status game forever. Here's the truth that changes everything. Real wealth isn't about looking rich. It's about becoming rich quietly while everyone else plays expensive status games. The Persian chess master understood exponential growth and started with a single grain of rice. The wise builder chose solid rock foundations over impressive appearances. The humble Jewish merchant built appreciating assets instead of impressive possessions. And the Babylonian father gave his son knowledge over gold, creating wealth that lasted generations. You've learned the 4 pillars of quiet wealth building. Harness the compound time machine by starting immediately with any amount. Escape the status trap by choosing assets over appearances. Build invisible wealth through appreciating investments rather than depreciating possessions. And create a legacy foundation by teaching money wisdom to the next generation. Here's what I need you to do right now. Don't wait for Monday. Don't wait for more money. Don't wait for perfect conditions. Choose one principle from today and implement it this week. Calculate opportunity costs before your next purchase over $100. Audit your status spending for the next 30 days, or start having money conversations with your kids using the 3-jar system. Comment "Quiet Wealth" below if you're done playing status games and ready to build real wealth. Tell me, which ancient wisdom story hit you hardest? Was it the chess master's exponential thinking, the builder's solid foundation, the merchant's asset focus, or the father's legacy wisdom? Should I create a follow-up video revealing the exact investment accounts, percentage allocations, and specific apps these quiet millionaires use to build their invisible wealth portfolios? Remember this: looking rich is easy and temporary. Being rich is harder but permanent. The tortoise always beats the hare, the oak tree outlasts the flower garden, and quiet wealth defeats loud debt every single time. Your future millionaire self is waiting for the decision you make today.